Hello and welcome to another episode of With Enough Prep Time. I'm your host, the Nerd Man, and today we're going to be talking about Josh Whedon and certain new tweets that have come about from Ray Fisher. And we're really going to be investigating this thing. I want to start off by saying straight away, there might be some confusion in the title of my video. I stand with Charisma Carpenter. I do. I really do. I know many of you also agree with me that you stand with Charisma Carpenter. If you don't know about Charisma Carpenter's allegations, basically to put a synopsis of what happened is that whilst pregnant, Josh Whedon bullied her, called her fat at some point, or would joke that she was getting fat, and also would also, when she'd given birth, I believe, he then admonished her for it. He apparently asked her is she keeping the baby or something like that at one point, and then admonished her for having the baby, mocked her religious beliefs, and and then supposedly punished her, according to her, for having a baby. That's the thing about it. I think also I'm not sure if she mentioned this, but there is something going around that he may have written her off the show for having a baby, but then she came back to the show afterwards. So I really, I believe her because this story came out quite a long time ago, and I stand with her that is awful behavior, and he ought to have been punished for that behavior. That being said, what I believe is true, right? What I believe to be true doesn't really matter. I am not the judge, jury, and executioner of anybody. And I want people to think about this, all of the Ray Fisher people out there, the I stand with Ray Fisher, even though he's given no evidence or no proof to any allegation against himself. Instead, he's gone off to a whole different other show and used them in an investigation about the Justice League, a Buffy the Vampire show that was filming in the 90s. And trust me, I'm not a fan of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I'm not a fan of Josh Whedon. I don't care. I'm completely neutral when it comes to Josh Whedon. He's not somebody who particularly interests me other than these allegations. So Ray Fisher's gone all the way back to this show to prove that Josh Whedon abused him and was racist, and that Jeff Johns was racist, by the way, by implication. And because he's gone back to Jeff Johns just being an enabler now, that Jeff Johns was racist, and Walter Hamada and everybody else. That Josh Whedon being an asshole to Charisma Carpenter because she was pregnant on whilst shooting Buffy the Vampire Slayer somehow makes Josh Whedon guilty many years later. I think 20 years, something like that, 15 at least years later, on Justice League reshoots. It would be thrown out of court. If you brought this to court, this is the equivalent, honestly, the equivalent of saying, that guy burgled a store 20 years ago. So yesterday he must have murdered that old woman. Does that make sense? That guy burgled a store 20 years ago. So yesterday he must have killed that old woman. That's the equivalent of what Ray Fisher's saying right now. and people are standing with him. I do not stand with Ray Fisher. I stand with Charisma Carpenter, who was brave enough to tell us her whole story. And not only that, we know of the reality of that story previously because of what had happened to what had been reported in past, and how she said she'd forgiven him for doing that, right? And now she's come back, and this is another thing that we need to talk about, because before, to her, it wasn't abuse. She only realized later it was abuse after the Me Too movement, and actually it isn't abuse. It's just reckless endangerment. It's it's creating an unsafe workplace for one of your employees. It's not a sexual or any other kind of abuse. It's just very bad practice that he should be punished for. It's a HR matter, right? So I want to start with this image because I think this is important to the Snyder fans. Before I go into all of these tweets, I think this is very, very important to the Snyder fans. I want you to imagine for a second, all of you who are standing with Ray Fisher, that Josh Whedon at this very moment is contemplating suicide. He's seriously contemplating suicide. I want you to imagine for a moment that maybe his children at home who are going to school at the moment are being bullied because people are saying that their dad is a sexual predator because of a tweet. And they're contemplating suicide. How would you feel if one of his children or he himself committed suicide because of a tweet, and then you found out much later that Josh Whedon actually was innocent of all charges except for what happened with Charisma Carpenter? The people were simply just piling on to Josh Whedon because, he's at his most vulnerable moment, and some of them didn't like him or didn't like their experience working with him. How would you feel? I just want you to contemplate. I stand with Ray Fisher guys, right, who are now piling on to Josh Whedon and saying how much of a bad guy he is because of one accusation by Charisma Carpenter, which does make him an asshole. Definitely makes him an asshole. Imagine now, with your suicide prevention, that you have advocated for suicide prevention this whole time, that Josh Whedon or one of his young children may be contemplating suicide because their father is an abuser and people are making fun of them. Or his wife may be thinking of suicidal thoughts. Right? Josh Whedon will deserve everything he gets when we see what the investigation showed. And if there's any other further accusations of illegality on his part by the Buffy the Vampire Slayer cast, it is behest upon them to go out and lay it all out and say this is what I accuse him of. And then if they want to put it on Twitter so that he can answer these allegations, then they can do so. Right? It's not you put it on Twitter, a vague statement on Twitter that is left to interpretation for all of us to figure out what exactly we think Josh Whedon may have done. So I wanted to give that small introduction before I start going through some of these tweets. All right. So the first tweet we have is from Ray Fisher. So Ray Fisher says, "What makes Walter Hamada the most dangerous kind of enabler is his willingness to blindly cover for his colleagues. Had he succeeded in discouraging the Justice League investigation, we would not be here. He owes Charisma Carpenter and every other participant an apology. All right. Why does Walter Hamada owe anyone an apology? He doesn't owe you an apology. He doesn't owe anybody. Charisma Carpenter, he doesn't owe anybody an apology. First of all, let's make it clear. You, Ray Fisher, and this is, again, I'm going to go through all of the different allegations that have come up. You, Ray Fisher, have had to go so far because you're literally, I'm completely baffled by Ray Fisher at the moment. I'm not baffled by Charisma Carpenter. I think Charisma Carpenter is really great. Out of everyone, she's the only stand-up person in this whole situation, right, that I can see. So he tried to discourage you from doing an investigation because he was trying to protect one of his friends. He was just trying to say, I don't recognize this in Jeff Johns. You're trying to do an investigation about Jeff Johns, and I don't recognize this. So first of all, he was trying to dissuade you from doing an investigation into Jeff Johns, something that you readily admitted, Ray Fisher. But you're saying that he owes you and everyone else an apology because you tried to stop an investigation, but he didn't try and stop an investigation into Josh Whedon. So even on that basic count, you're wrong. He didn't try and stop an investigation into Josh Whedon. He said, according to you, that he tried to throw Josh Whedon under the bus. So he was more than happy for you to do an investigation into Josh Whedon, right? Which would have brought up, the Charisma Carpenter allegations, and then all would have been well, according to, Charisma Carpenter being able to, present her case, and other participants being able to present their case about Josh Whedon. Okay, so that's the first point. So he didn't stop a Justice League investigation. He stopped a Justice League investigation because he didn't believe the allegations against Jeff Johns. Secondly, till this day, you still haven't said what the allegations against Jeff Johns is. What we've done, which is very, very curious, is state that John Berg, Jeff Johns, one other exec that I'm forgetting the name of at this very moment, are all guilty by association of having worked with Josh Whedon. So they're guilty of everything Josh Whedon supposedly had done because they worked with him or worked alongside him. You still haven't expressed exactly what you meant by they were racist and they were sending racist notes to you. None of that has been presented. So basically, Josh Whedon's guilty, so everyone's guilty. And Walter Hamada now owes you an apology for trying to protect Jeff Johns, when in fact, everything that has come out that has been bad from the investigation has solely been against Josh Whedon. Not one person has come out and said, Jeff Johns did this to me, or Jeff Johns did that to me, or Jeff Johns, acted very, very inappropriately to me. No cast of Stargirl is coming out saying, now that we stand with Ray Fisher because Jeff Johns is a really fucked up guy. Nobody has done that. Nobody from the cast of Shazam, nobody from any cast that Jeff Johns has produced on has thus far, or John Berg, or any of those guys. The only person anyone has come out with anything about is Josh Whedon. Let's make that very, very clear. So Walter Hamada was not enabling anybody. Walter Hamada said, fine, throw, he even said throw John Berg, according to you. He said, throw John Berg and throw Josh Whedon under the bus. Just please leave Jeff Johns out of it. Nobody's come forward about Jeff Johns yet. Maybe they will in future. We'll see. But nobody has come forward about Jeff Johns yet. So he said, throw Josh Whedon under the bus, throw whatever under the bus. So he was absolutely fine with Charisma Carpenter coming forward, anybody coming forward against Josh Whedon. So he wasn't enabling anybody. You're contradicting yourself. You're fucking contradicting yourself, Ray Fisher. And if anyone wants to me that he's contradicting himself, I want to. I'm almost want to go back. Let me see if I can find the original bullshit allegation. And I still against Ray Fisher. Something against people, and they really are horrible. Put it out. Let us know what the investigation said, what the investigation, so that we can make our own judgment. That's all I've ever said. Anybody against who's not been standing with Ray Fisher has ever said. We want the proof. We don't just condemn people because some famous person tells us to. It doesn't work like that. So he says, Walter Armada owes me apology again. I thought this guy was going scorched earth after everyone. And so here's a clip. We're getting closer and closer. It's so funny that he puts a woman who falsely accuses a black person. He retweets that. And yet he makes these accusations with no understanding of how people are going to perceive it in terms of due process. It's like, it's crazy. All right. It is a long time ago, this particular tweet, but it's so worth going back to. So this is the first one where he calls Walter Amada the most dangerous type of enabler. So Walter Amada is the most dangerous kind of enabler. His lies and WBPR failed September 4th hit piece sought to undermine the very real issues of the Justice League investigation. I will not participate in any associated production. Although now he's coming and he's very much promoting the Justice League at the moment, the Justice League Snyder movie. So himself once again. And I want to get this because this is so fucking important right now. And it's making my video much longer than I wanted. And that annoys me. But like, I'm going to get this bit because it's so fucking important. And this is before I'm going to go into defense. What I can say while I'm looking this up, because it is really important, as I said, what I can say about Josh Whedon, just to state a defense of Josh Whedon, right, is that in spite of what Josh Whedon may or may not have done, on the set of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. The fact that Ray Fisher, years and years later, comes in with an allegation against Josh Whedon to do with the Justice League, and has to go all the way back to when he was working in the 90s on Buffy the Vampire Slayer to get any kind of credible allegation of him doing actual wrongdoing, which is what, if true, what Charisma Carpenter says, which I absolutely do believe, because there seems to be a trace of evidence to it. But he has to go all the way back then to get any kind of credible allegation against Josh Whedon. Nothing from any cast or crew or anybody on the set of Justice League itself has come out to condemn Josh Whedon for any particular act, apart from, what was it, that he color corrected a black person on set, which he came out and he immediately was able to snipe down. So nothing from the actual Justice League set has actually been said bad or shown to be something that was done by Josh Whedon, which is an actionable, like a crime or a violation of, HR rules or anything like that has come out about Josh Whedon on the Justice League set. The only thing that's come out is something from like 20 years ago, and it was bad. I'm not saying it was good what happened to Charisma Carpenter, but that is nothing to do with a Justice League set. Again, what does that do? It says somebody robbed a bank 20 years ago. We know he did it. So he must be the person who killed the old woman yesterday. There is no sense to that statement. It doesn't make sense. It's not even the same kind of crime that they're accusing Josh Whedon of. It's not like somebody on Justice League was pregnant and Josh Whedon was being an asshole to her. And therefore, Charisma Carpenter's experience has some bearing on what Ray Fisher is accusing her of. In fact, none of the accusations that have come out about what Josh Whedon did in the 90s has any bearing on what Ray Fisher seems to be accusing him of, which was the only thing that was actionable was that he was a racist. Where has anybody from the from Buffy the Vampire Slayer set accused, Josh of racism? Can somebody tell me where that's happened? So let's go to Ray Fisher. All right. If I can't find this, I'm gonna actually look this up, because this tweet just shows everything about Ray Fisher's allegations and why they're so fucking silly. I bet you it's in here. Let's see if I can find it in here. Where he said, to show how deep this went to Walter Hamada, it was something along the lines. I'm gonna do. Search button. Okay. What I'm gonna do. Okay, here we go. Wonderful. We now have Ray Fisher's statement. So you can better understand how deep this goes. After speaking, so you can better understand how deep this goes. After speaking out about Justice League, I received a phone call from the president of DC Films, wherein he attempted to throw Josh Whedon and John Berg under the bus. Then on John's, I will not. A over E. Okay, so let's see how this contrasts with his here. Is a very interesting contrast here. Very, very interesting contrast indeed. Which shows the absolutely twist the truth to bend facts to fit his narrative. So let's go after all of his promotion of the Justice League, promoting the Justice League, a film that he clearly stated he will not work on anything or promote anything to do with Walter Hamada. Well, Walter Hamada is producing that one, my friend. All right, so we're very, very close. Yeah. What makes Walter Hamada the most dangerous kind of enabler is his willingness to blindly cover for his colleagues. Had he succeeded in discouraging the Justice League investigation, so let's just make sure we understand that. All he did was discourage. He didn't try and block it. He discouraged it. He said, maybe we shouldn't do this. That's what he's saying, right? And that makes him the most dangerous type of enabler because he tries to persuade someone of another point of view, right? So unless you're solely, have Ray Fisher's perspective on things, then you're dangerous, right? That's essentially what he's saying. Because he didn't try and say, no, absolutely not. You're not gonna, I'm not gonna let you do this investigation. He simply tried to discourage him. He simply said, I don't want this smoke on, this is already a controversial enough production. It's all gone wrong. We've lost millions of dollars. Can we not have an investigation into all of this stuff as well? Maybe we can punish people behind doors, this kind of thing. So we tried to discourage him, tried to negotiate it with him on that, which is his fucking job. Let's be honest. That's what he's, as head of, DC. He doesn't want DC Creative. He doesn't want the whole department to be marred in controversy because it will impact sales on the film. Right? What if a number of people who aren't keeping up with this, right, who ordinarily would have got HBO Max to get Justice League movie, the Justice League movie now, are now reading that the director is a potential rapist because they might think that this Justice League is still the same Justice League that was directed by Josh Whedon. There are people who don't know these things, right? So this is why it is Walter Hamada's job to make sure, right, that these kind of things are circulate only within the company so that they can deal with it there. Is that wrong? Is that, something that maybe should be changed within Hollywood? Well, look, if I have a product, right, and one of my workers has done something horrible, like one of the presidents of the company has done something horrible, right? Would I try and suppress knowledge of that horrible thing he's done while absolutely punishing him for it, so that my product, which, we're all innocent, doesn't get associated with this prick? Maybe. That's the thing. That's what you have to think about as a president of a company. That's because now the whole Justice League is associated with Josh Whedon, potential abuser, a man who was abusing pregnant women. Okay, so the whole of Justice League's success now is really on the Snyder Army, because people who are just casually connected to it may have heard rumblings about all the horrible stuff that went on, and think, you know what, I don't want to support a film that has all of this sexual misconduct and racism and everything involved with it. That is why Walter Hamada was trying to dissuade you from bubbling up this cauldron. And perhaps he shouldn't have. You're right, perhaps he shouldn't have. But he didn't try and stop you. He tried to dissuade you, and that is his job, giving you the reason. All right, so had he succeeded in discouraging the Justice League investigation, we would not be here. He owes Charisma Carpenter and every other participant an apology. Well, that contradicts your statement here, doesn't it, Ray Fisher? So you can better understand how deep this goes. After speaking out about the Justice League, I received a phone call from the president of DC Films, wherein he attempted to throw Josh Whedon and John Berg under the bus in hopes that I would relent on Geoff Johns. I will not. Well, so here we go. He was willing for you to do the investigation. He just wanted you to focus on Josh Whedon and John Berg. So thus far, nothing has come out about Geoff Johns. Nothing from Stargirl. Nothing from any of his other productions about him being a monster, an asshole, touching little girls, doing anything. The only thing that's come out is about Josh Whedon. So he was more than happy, according to your own words, for you to have that investigation against Josh Whedon. According to your own words. He wanted you to throw Josh Whedon and John Berg under the bus. Therefore, he doesn't owe an apology to Charisma Carpenter at all, because he was more than happy to get the guy who supposedly did all the bad things to have an investigation about him. That was it. So Charisma Carpenter, all of her story would have come out. He would have been shamed like you wanted. He just didn't want anything happening against Geoff Johns. Now, for this statement to make sense, that Walter Hamada owes you an apology, you have to show us how Geoff Johns was also part of this toxic behavior, toxic environment. Because thus far, no toxicity has come out about Geoff Johns. Not even so much as he upset people on set. Gal Gadot hasn't said anything about him. Nobody else has said anything about him. Simply nothing unprofessional has been said about Geoff Johns apart from you. Is it revenge? Are you blinded by revenge, Ray Fisher? Is it maybe that really the only person who really needed investigating here was Josh Whedon, but you want to extend it a little bit so as to take out other people? The fact that Josh Whedon has had some people come out against him, and I'm going to do a part 2 to this, has absolutely nothing to do with Geoff Johns. It has nothing to do with other executives that Walter Hamada or any other executives, it doesn't paint any guilt on their back that Josh Whedon in the 90s did something horrible to Charisma Carpenter. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, do comment. Please comment on. I like to hear what you think about everything that I've presented here. But I'm going to do a part 2. It's going to be following right after this, where we're going to look into all of the accusations against Josh Whedon. All right. Thanks so much. Have a good one.